Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300, or perhaps the apps for those two stations, which are free to download and free to use, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of topics, but surrounding one football game. I think you know the one. Mondays after an NFL week in this format, in this medium, is about the listener. And I want to hear from you. I, of course, have thoughts. And I could monologue for 3 hours. I don't want to. I want to talk to you. I want to get your feelings. There's so much from this game to go over. So if you want to call or text in the show, you can at 719-247-1313. Let's start with the main idea here of this show and that game yesterday. Jarrett Stidham ended up being put in the exact position he could not afford to be in, which was to play the role of hero and have to bring the Broncos back in the fourth quarter of the AFC Championship. The last place the Broncos and Jarrett Stidham could have afforded to be in, and yet he ended up there. But he was put there in large part to the last person you thought would have put him in that position, and that's Sean Payton. The entire game flipped after Sean Payton went for it on 4th and 1, up 7-0. The Patriots in that game had nothing going. It was early, but they had nothing for the Denver Broncos. Broncos were moving the ball on offense, on defense. Drake May and the offense were doing hardly anything. And by calling that 4th and 1 and not converting, it breathed life into the New England Patriots. It gave them a boost. And you saw it. They started to move the ball on offense a little bit better on the ensuing drive. Drive right after that after they ended up punting. Jarrett Stidham throws the backwards pass. Patriots in business, they score a touchdown. Everything that the Broncos had going. Sean Payton has talked about fast starts. Broncos got off to a fast start. That big play from Jarrett Stidham to Marvin Mims. They helped the New England Patriots get going in that football game. It wasn't anything that New England did to get themselves going. It was what Denver did. And then after Drake May rushed for that touchdown, the Broncos never got back momentum in that game. They never did. Here's Broncos coach Sean Payton on why he made that call.
To get up 14, I was just watching the way our defense was playing. And, look, the turnover on our end resulting in a touchdown. And outside of that, man, I thought we did a good job in containing them. There'll be a number of things when we watch the tape I'll look at and critique and pay close attention to. But it was a hard-fought game, and we didn't do enough to win it.
Yeah, I don't like, mixing the justification for the 4th and 1 call with the Jarrett Stidham turnover, with all this other stuff. Because it's almost like you're trying to dodge criticism because you know that that's the first question you're going to get asked. He didn't have to be on social media to understand what the reaction was going to be on social media. So I don't like that, first of all. But the second takeaway from that clip is take everything that Sean Payton said about why he went for it and then tell me why being up 10-0 would have been objectively worse than being up 14-0. Like, why did it have to be 14-0 with the way that your defense was playing? And the way that New England wasn't playing, which was they were doing nothing against you. What Sean Payton did yesterday was go for the knockout in the second round of the fight when a knockdown would have been just as good. And then you could set up the knockout later. With the way that the game was playing out at home with that Broncos defense, 10-0 at halftime. Forget Will Lutz missing the field goal. Let's just say it's 10-0 at the break. I mean, that would have felt like 20-0. I mean, the only points that New England got were as a result, I think, of the momentum that was gained by making a fourth down stop. And then with the weather that came in that second half, that would have been a wrap. Patriots aren't coming back from 10-0 down in that weather. Having done virtually nothing the entire first half, if it would have played out the way I think it was, like, you got to make your opponent do something against you, earn the momentum that they get in the game, and the Broncos just handed it to them. I mean, even if you didn't know that the weather was coming in, and I don't know that anybody did. I mean, I looked at the forecast. I tried to look back at the forecast. I didn't see anyone going, hey, second half of this game, it's going to be a mess. I don't know that anybody picked that out. But even without it, again, you have the Broncos defense. You have a young quarterback in Drake May, who the pressure would ratchet up on him as the game wore along. And you gave New England hope. You gave them life. And they, to their credit, they took advantage of it. That call showed almost a complete lack of a feel for the game. And what's crazy is that Sean Payton didn't even bring analytics into his justification. I thought for sure that was going to be what it was. No, he brought up a feel of the game argument. The way our defense was playing, the defense that we saw, it wasn't analytics driven. It was what he saw, but he saw wrong. And it makes me wonder, for a guy that I think throughout his time in Denver has had tremendous feel for the game, you know, situational football. I don't know if it wasn't hubris that entered in the equation here. You know, all the talk about, I'm not worried about Stiddy, and the first words he says when the news came down was, watch out. You have to wonder if that was it behind the psychology of making that play. Like, with my backup quarterback, I'm going to go for the knockout in the first half of this game. I'm going to put you out with my backup quarterback. Watch out. Without him saying all the things he said leading up to that game, that wouldn't have been I don't know that would have been my thought. But there was so much talk from Sean Payton about how the last thing you need to worry about is Jared Stidham, and threaten the New England Patriots and the rest of the NFL world by saying, watch out. Was he getting caught up in the moment with the ability to say, with my backup quarterback that I have sworn to you all week that I could do everything that I can do with Bo Nix? Did that lead him into that call? And that's as good of an explanation I've seen anyone have. Because it would just, everybody knew it. Were you on social media yesterday? Everybody knew it. I tweeted out immediately, I would have taken the points. My colleague here at KVOR, Jim Arthur, replied to me. That's what I said. Mike Florio, take the points. Other people, you go up by 2 scores. You always take the points when you can go up by 2 scores. Like, the reaction was immediate and universal. I couldn't find one tweet where it's like, good on Sean Payton for going for it there on 4th down. Tony Romo questioned it. I mean, Sean Payton likes to show that he's the smartest guy in the room. I don't know. I think he's outnumbered on this one, and was outnumbered immediately. Not in retrospect, not in hindsight. Everybody thought, even without the weather that we would soon encounter, that was a questionable decision, and that may come back to bite the Denver Broncos. We knew it in the moment. So surely after the game, Sean Payton, knowing everything he knew, would regret making that decision.
There's always regrets, you know. Yeah, I mean, look, I felt like, here we are, 4th and 1. We felt close enough that, and it's also a call you make based on the team you're playing and how what you're watching on the other side of the ball. So yeah, there'll always be second thoughts.
Okay, there's the justification with what he was seeing from the New England defense. I don't know. They kind of look like they blew up that play from the outset. So did they read something wrong defensively, or is he just talking about the fact that they were driving down the field against New England? But we've seen this Broncos team, even with Bo Nix, sputter on drives in the red zone. I don't know what he was seeing. I didn't see it. And here's the crazy thing on top of it. This was something else Sean Payton said that just goes to my point of, how did he not see or think what we were all thinking in that moment?
You don't know that it's going to be like this 3-point game. But it became apparent that with each possession, a field goal, that type of thing was going to be real important. We weren't able to get it done. And it's tough, especially in this game. This
isn't hindsight. We thought under normal conditions that game could have come down to a field goal. Did Sean Payton think he was going to blow out the New England Patriots with his backup quarterback? It would help me make my hubris argument for why he made the call on 4th and 1. I thought it was going to be I thought either it would be a close game in the Broncos' favor or it would be a New England blowout. Broncos blowout was not even anywhere near my thought process going into that game. If they have Bo Nix, I wouldn't have been picking them to blow out New England. So I don't know how the idea that the game could come down to a field goal, a 3-point game, how that was not part of his calculus here. Look, the thought all week from me and from many others is that Sean Payton would protect Jarrett Stidham. Right? That Jarrett Stidham would not be asked to do too much. He would just operate the offense, and with everything else the Broncos had in its favor, that was ultimately going to win the day. That was the premise that I was operating on all last week. Oh, he won't ask Jarrett Stidham to do too much. Like once in a while, maybe he'll dial up a deep pass or something like that, but not in a situation that could ultimately tilt the game one way or another. Surely Sean Payton knew in his heart of hearts going into that game that there was some drop-off between Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham. Some drop-off in ability. Not a precipitous drop-off, but there's some difference, right? And 1 yard, that circumstance to get that 1 yard is a big difference between Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix. I mean, we'll talk about it, whether the Broncos win that game if Bo Nix is healthy. But I just start with, that's not a call you make with the guy that is your backup. You were doing so well. Everything was going your way, and you pressed your luck. And it backfired in a major way and ended up costing you the game. We could talk about a lot of other stuff, and we will. It all starts there. It all stems from that. That decision is more than anything else why the Denver Broncos are not going to Santa Clara. And the fact that it was self-inflicted, the fact that Jarrett Stidham was in the situation he was in late in that football game, being self-inflicted, being something that Sean Payton, a situation that Payton put him in, that's incredibly surprising. Maybe he just couldn't help himself. But it was the downfall of the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship. Do you agree? 719-24-7-1313. That wasn't the only thing that contributed to the Broncos' downfall, but it's hard for me to point at anything before I point at that decision to go for it on 4th and 1. Take your thoughts, 719-24-7-1313. More Drive Time Sports on this Monday. You're listening to 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. 4th and 1. 4th and 1 will go down in Broncos lore like the Mile High Miracle. It will be a moment where Broncos fans felt like the game was theirs, only to have it ripped away, except this time it's not Joe Flacco throwing over the top of their heads. It's an inside job. It's Sean Payton making the wrong call at the wrong time and completely changing that football game. And this coming in from Gary. It's interesting. I was curious if I would get anybody texting in backing up Sean Payton. It appears Gary is. Says we are only questioning the decision because it didn't work. They have gotten a touchdown out of it. The entire sports radio world would be calling Sean Payton bold and courageous. I'm a Lions fan, so I understand these 4th down attempts all too well. When it works, it's all sunshine and rainbows. When it doesn't work, they are the worst coach ever. Which is funny. Not that your text is funny, but it's funny in a serendipitous way, because one of the texts I got earlier was, Ryan, I thought the 4th down call was the right call, signed Dan Campbell. And I get what you're aiming at, Gary. But we can't be so results oriented. And I actually don't think we're being results oriented today. I mean, look, I'm not getting all of your thoughts simultaneously. I'm not getting all the thoughts of every person watching that football game simultaneously. But I'll just tell you, I thought it was the wrong call in the moment. As it was happening, Tony Romo questioned it, and a whole bunch of people on social media questioned it immediately. I don't think, because there's nuance to it. Like some 4th down calls, there's an open debate. I don't think there's really a debate here. And to say that if it were to work out, everybody would have thought that Sean Payton was correct. I don't know. I would hope that we are a little bit more process oriented. I mean, the nicest thing you would say is that Sean Payton is kind of insane. Like, that would be the nicest thing, because it's not the right call. It's just not. It's not because it didn't work. It's because in the moment it was the wrong call. The Patriots had nothing going on, and the Broncos gave them that opportunity, and we see this. You know, a good example from another sport is in hockey. You talk about how, having a power play can really sustain momentum or give momentum to the team that's on the power play, except the Colorado Avalanche, because it's always bad for them. But in general, going on the power play can be a huge momentum boost. But if you don't convert, like the Avalanche tend not to do, why are they catching strays on a Monday? They did win yesterday. But it's just factual. If you kill a penalty, it gives you momentum. It's the same thing here with this 4th and 1. Yeah, converting it sustains the momentum. Which, by the way, there's no guarantee that they get it in the end zone anyway. Right? And the Patriots are a good example. I'll talk about the Drake May 4th down sneak, but guess what? They didn't score a touchdown after that. So there was still work to be done. This was in 4th and goal at the 1. That if they convert, it's a touchdown. If they don't, they get nothing. They would still have some distance to go to get what Sean Payton felt like they needed in that moment, which was a touchdown. But because he didn't get it, it gave New England momentum. And isn't that that's kind of my crux of the argument here. Yeah, a field goal is not as sexy as scoring a touchdown, but you go up 2 scores. And we still don't know if New England is going to get anything going at any point during that first half. We had no evidence that they were going to get going. You're not wrong in a general sense, but that's why you got to take it on a case-by-case basis and try to be as much process-oriented as you can be. That decision was not one of these, fourth down analytics, go for it. There was a feel of the game thing that everybody picked up on, and Sean Payton seemed to not. You're right in a general sense, but this particular one, I think, didn't necessarily. There are exceptions to every rule. I think this was it. The best thing you could say about Sean Payton if they converted was, man, that dude's crazy. And that's not necessarily a term of endearment. It was the wrong call in the moment, and it backfired spectacularly. And everything else that happened in the game was a direct result of that. But there were other things. Like, for instance, the weather. And I got to tell you, that retractable roof cannot come soon enough. That new stadium that Greg Penner is building at Burnham Yard in Denver, that cannot come soon enough after that game yesterday. This is why climate-controlled football is better. Climate-controlled sports is better. And we talk all the time about how we want the referees to let the players decide the game. How about Mother Nature? Can Mother Nature let the players on the field decide the game? What you essentially got, which greatly intensifies the criticism around Sean Payton going forward on 4th and 1, is essentially you had half of a football game yesterday. That's what you had. Once that weather hit, that was a wrap. I mean, you might as well call the game. You had the first two quarters were like regulation. The beginning of the third quarter was overtime. The next score went to New England, and that was it. How is that cool by everybody? I'm not saying that it is. I'm just asking in a general sense, how is it okay? I argue all the time with people that love snow games and love that football is played in the elements, and they do their John Vicenda voice. You like it now? Are you at least a little bit excited now that the Broncos are going to play in a stadium where they can decide whether they play in the elements or not? And look, I put something on Threads similar to what I just said. And somebody responded by saying something not very nice. Is a word that started with a P, and sometimes it's related to a cat. That's not what this is about. It's not about that the players can't deal with it, like physically. And I said this late last week when the conversation of weather came up. This is not, I don't feel bad for the players in terms of having to stay warm. That's not what this is about. It's not the cold. That's the issue. It's the swirling snow and the wind, all that stuff. That's what this is about. This isn't about toughness. I know the guys can play in that weather. They got heaters on the sidelines. They got team-issued gear. They can layer up 50 layers if they want to. That's not what this is about. This is about how it impacts the outcome of the game. And here's Sean Payton. By the way, if I can get to it, here's Sean Payton on how the weather impacted the way that they played or the calls he could make in that second half.
I know we talked a lot about footing, ball security, like, as the conditions changed, that became something that our players had to be, real mindful of. There were certain throws, though, that we weren't going to call, and we just didn't do enough in the run game or in the pass game.
They didn't have their full playbook available to them, not because New England, their opponent, took their ability to call this play or that play. The elements kept them from being able to do that. And look, it affected both teams. This is not a pro Broncos take. This is not me taking the Broncos side. I'd be saying the same thing if Denver ends up winning that game, because I just don't like it. I don't like that the weather is a main character in this story. And yeah, both teams had to deal with it. It's unfair to both teams. I don't like that both teams have to deal with it. Here's Jared Stidham on how the conditions impacted him.
The conditions are what they are. I mean, both teams were playing in it. So I think we only had a handful of plays in the third quarter when we were going into the wind that way. And in the fourth quarter, it was just back and forth and trying to make plays. So like I said, the conditions are what they are. I mean, both teams had to do it. So,
and I get that. Totally get that. But let me relate it to officiating. Okay, both teams are subjected to the same level of officiating. And we talk about this bad officiating. Bad officials aren't bad because they have a bias towards one team or another. That's not what occurs. But both teams are subject to bad calls. And we don't like that, do we? We don't like when the referees, whether it's good or bad, we don't like when officials impose themselves on the game, like last week with the PI calls or the Brandon Cooks thing. We don't like when it feels like the officials are having an outsized impact on the game. The weather yesterday had an outsized impact on that game. It became right along there. In fact, I'm looking right now. Pardon the interruption. Michael Wilbon and Frank Isola on the bottom. More about Patriots, Broncos, or weather. That should not happen. It shouldn't be more about Patriots, Broncos, or weather. It should be more about Patriots or Broncos. Did the Broncos lose that game or the Patriots win it? Not did the weather decide the game. And look, credit to Mike Vrabel because he managed the game better. He managed the game better in what turned out to be basically a half of a game. And that's why I say this is not above the 4th and 1 call. But I don't even think Mike Vrabel should be in a position where he has to manage the game with a impending snowstorm. Look, if you like what Buffalo is doing with their new stadium, where it's still an outdoor stadium, but they put in architecture to keep the wind from swirling all the time, that's fine. That can be our compromise. I like retractable roofs. I like a natural surface with the roof to be opened or closed. I don't like closed domes, but I like the retractable roofs. But if you want a fully open air stadium, at least do the thing that Buffalo is doing to keep the wind from swirling. Again, this isn't about cold. This is about one team not having the ability in the third quarter or the fourth quarter to do anything because the conditions are so bad. It was a half of a game yesterday. A half of a game. As a consumer, that's not satisfying. I want to watch a whole game, and I want the player. Like, I get it. In 1893, it was made to be played outdoors in whatever elements it may be. It's 2026. Too much is at stake. Sports is too big of a business. I'm not even talking about betting. I'm talking about the fact that it generates a ton of revenue in ticket sales and in viewership and all this kind of stuff. I want a 4-quarter game decided by the coaches and players on the field. And once that snow came in, that was it. The game was over. They might as well have called it like a baseball game. We're done. I don't like that. Yes, ultimately it cost the Denver Broncos, but it could have easily cost the New England Patriots, and I'd be just as upset if that were the case. I wanted to find out for 4 quarters, the biggest game of the year, who is better, New England or Denver? And now I have to decide after 2.5 quarters who the better team was, because I can't get any real idea of who late in that game was better. I mean, better considering the elements. But I mean, look at Drake May. He had the one flea flicker. That was it. The guy looked like a right-handed Tim Tebow for most of the game. Like, I want to see Drake, the full breadth of his powers on that stage. Didn't decide the game. Like, it wasn't the reason. Like, it wasn't the Broncos would have won the game. It cut the game short. And because the Broncos were down, they were going to lose that game. 4th and 1 is bigger. Jared Stidham's backwards pass, bigger, more consequential. Don't misunderstand me. This is just another opportunity for me to preach the gospel of climate-controlled football. Like, for instance, the game that's going to be played in 2 weeks. Now, it's a warm weather, but they're controlling the climate in that regard, right? Playing it in Santa Clara. If it rains, then I'm going to be upset. 719-247-1313. Now we can get back to what really cost all the things that cost the Denver Broncos that game, but I don't like the weather. I don't. Should be Broncos Patriots, not Broncos Patriots and weather. Back after this. 719-247-1313 is the number. If you want to connect with the show, you can do so either by phone or text, but just know that if you call, I'll take you right out of the break like Brad. Brad wants to weigh in on the weather yesterday. Fire away, Brad. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks a lot. Listen, I've really been enjoying your show this afternoon. I think you're right on, but I don't think you quite quantified all the benefits the Patriots got from this change of weather.
Okay.
You know, you're absolutely right. Patriots, and I'm a Pats fan, right? The Patriots were being totally outplayed before the weather hit. May was gun shy because he had, 5 turnovers against the Texans. Stidham was amazing, right? But then the weather hit, right? Now Stidham had to be gun shy too. It took that advantage away from the Broncos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, the noise factor, right? The Broncos limited ticketing and attendance to, basically to
just Broncos fans, yeah.
Country.
Yeah.
And what does snow do? It dampens the noise, right? Not only that, but you're in the stands, you can't see the game. You don't know when to make noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the orange cards, the guys on the field can't see it anymore. They can't even see each other, right? So that helped the Patriots too. But one of the biggest things was the freaking uniforms, right? The Patriots were wearing white uniforms. They basically became invisible. While the Broncos, in their bright orange uniforms, you could see them all the way up and down the field, right? And that, I think that interception was, what lost it for the Broncos, more so than the 4th and 1.
So the interception that Christian Gonzalez had in the fourth quarter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because, can you see the Patriots in their white? No, he probably didn't even know the guy was there.
I would say, Brad, I don't know that you're wrong, but I would also say that did the conditions impact the delivery of that ball? Because it looked like it fell well short of where it should have been. Now, I know they were going with the wind, but I wonder the swirling and all that kind of stuff, whether it played a role in Stidham not being able to get the ball to Marvin Mims there.
Yeah, that's fair. But I'll tell you, I think I do fundamentally disagree, though. I love the way the weather changes the game, right? If you were a good receiver on a sunny day, you might suck on a snowy day, right? If you were a good kicker on a sunny day,
Yeah.
And that's always been a part of football. And I will hand this to the Patriots. They understood that better than the Broncos. They weren't passing because Drake May was gun shy. But on that last drive the Patriots had, and they didn't get past like the 2-yard line, so they punted. They knew not to pass, right? And then on the next, the follow, I think it was the following drive where the Broncos threw that interception. That was a mistake. Don't pass in those conditions. Like you said, the game was over. The only way you're going to score is a turnover and the rushing game. So,
yep.
I think the weather definitely. It's as if God made the Patriots invisible, right? And as a Pats fan, of course, we're loving that. But I'll hand it to the Broncos. They were totally outplaying the Patriots. We were all stressed out. It was amazing to see Stidham come out there, with all the bad press. And then I think the Patriots were off because May was gun shy. He was under a lot of criticism for the 5 turnovers on the Texans, and he's a young kid. So the weather really, really worked for the Patriots, I think, in so many ways.
But you're a proponent, and maybe the fact that you're a Patriots fan, given your team's previous history in games such as that. But you're saying it impacted the game, but you don't have a problem with it impacting the game.
I don't, because you saw the way Josh McDaniels adjusted, and you saw the way that Denver didn't. They threw that pass, and it was an interception. All
right. Appreciate it, Brad. Great call. Call more often. Love to hear from you at 719-247-1313. And again, I don't want to get away from the bigger story, which is Mike Vrabel managed the game and his personnel better than Sean Payton did. And he deserves full marks for that. My thing about the weather is I don't like seeing it. I don't want it. I don't want it to impact the game. I like hockey. I like basketball. Played indoors. The teams on the court or on the ice, the coaches involved in that game are ultimately deciding it. It's not these variables. But I get it. A lot of people do, like Brad, like the snow. I don't. And certainly it did not go in the favor of the Denver Broncos. Here, this coming in from the 719 here. The play before the blocked field goal, Stidham dropped and slid 2 yards short of the first down. No contact. Was he protecting himself for the next game? A winner would go forward, not slide, and hope to tie. I got to say, when I started reading that text, I thought this was an elements impacted the game text. It's not. It's an anti-Jared Stidham, which is fair. Stidham doesn't escape criticism. And this from the 719, somebody get Peyton a weather app. He put his team in difficult scenarios all season long with predictable and unimaginative play calling. It's why they have to come back so often. The one good call was the play action for a touchdown. Didn't establish the run early, so when the weather turned, it was hopeless. I thought that the Broncos ran it well before the weather hit. I mean, they were hard yards for sure. I thought R.J. Harvey in the first half ran the ball very well. And it's crazy. Like Sean Payton, to me, the story was Sean Payton too aggressive, not unimaginative, not conservative. He was anti-conservative. He was the other way, and that was the problem. Should have taken the 3 points. I thought the Broncos' running game was fine. Like, I understand that it tapered off as the game went on, but in the first half, they were running the ball very well. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, would the Denver Broncos have won that game if Bo Nix would have been starting? Welcome in hour 2 on this Monday after the AFC Championship game. Taking your thoughts at 719-247-1313. There is another way that you can interact with the show, and that is if you are watching on the social media platforms that belong to both Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. You can just drop a comment right there. Got a couple here from my buddy Mark Moses, as well as Eric has come to take his victory lap, and he deserves it. He had to fight off a lot of pro Broncos takes last weekend, so I'll get to those, or last week, I should say. I'll get to those as we move. It's just hour 2 of 3, so got time. Again, 719-247-1313. You could call or text in the show as well. It's hard to look at yesterday's game and not believe that the Broncos win that game if Bo Nix is playing. Because the way the game unfolded, I think the most stark difference between Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham as a quarterback made a huge difference. And that's their legs. That's their ability to run. 2 plays in particular that I think the Broncos would have been much better served with Bo Nix rather than Jarrett Stidham. The 4th and 1 that Sean Payton went for, did not get, and gave the Patriots momentum that they would never relinquish. And then the 3rd and 4 right at the end of the half that gave Will Lutz a longer field goal. The 4th and 1, you've seen Bo Nix make plays in that situation. Now, don't misunderstand me. Wrong call. And it's a more wrong call for Sean Payton to go for it in that situation because he doesn't have Bo Nix. But we've seen Bo Nix roll out on a short yardage situation, doesn't see anything, or he's under heavy rush and he turns it upfield and makes a play happen. We've seen that before. If you're a Broncos fan, you would be more confident in Bo Nix rolling out in that situation than Jarrett Stidham. Again, doesn't justify the call. The call was wrong. The call would have been wrong if Bo Nix would have been on the field. The reason why it may have been successful in spite of that was because of Bo Nix's running ability. Sean Payton going for it on 4th and 1 in that situation is the wrong call regardless of which quarterback he had in there. It's just the wrong call. But Bo Nix might have been able to bail him out with his legs. And Jarrett Stidham just can't. Like, that's the one thing. I was in agreement with a lot of the conversation regarding Jarrett Stidham. One that I never really bought into was the idea that he could run like Bo Nix or close to it. As throwers of the football, they were comparable. They are comparable. But as runners, Bo Nix is better. And then the 3rd and 4, Stidham makes it a 4th and 6, tacks on 2 more yards that Will Lutz has to kick that field goal because he wasn't able to get around the edge. And also because he drops back so far. Right? So you have a lesser runner that's dropping back further on a 3rd and 4, and he ends up losing 2 yards. And that was already going to be a difficult try for Will Lutz, and 50 plus, as you might imagine for many kickers, is anything but a chip shot, anything but a sure thing. He was 4 of 6 this year, 50 plus, and for his career, easily his worst range was 50 plus, which should not surprise you, right? Most kickers' worst percentage would probably be 50 plus, but you get 2 more yards. And maybe Will Lutz doesn't feel like he has to put as much leg behind it, and he can focus a little bit more on the accuracy instead of the power. But I think that 3rd and 4 doesn't become 4th and 6 with Bo Nix in his running ability. But I know those aren't going to be the plays that you're wondering the difference between Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham about. Really what you're asking, and I can hear you, you're asking about the backward pass. Right? The worst thing that Jarrett Stidham did in that game was that. And it was a huge play, no doubt about it. Would Bo Nix have done that? First, here's Jarrett Stidham on that turnover.
I can't put our team in a bad position like that. I was trying to throw it away to TB. He was in the area, and the pressure. He just got up on me real fast, and I was just trying to get rid of it. And like I said, I can't put the ball in the in a position like that. So that was completely on me.
Maybe Bo Nix's legs do him some good there because the rush was quick to get to Jarrett Stidham. And you see it in slow motion. Jarrett Stidham pumps and then reloads before throwing or whatever you want to, pushing that ball. So does Bo Nix make the decision when Jarrett Stidham pumps and then reloads? Do you see Bo Nix get rid of the ball at that point? One thing I have called into question with Bo Nix over the course of the season is his decision-making. Right? On occasion. Right? And Sean Payton has it drilled into his head to not take sacks. So I can't sit here and say unequivocally Bo Nix doesn't try to do something similar. I don't think Bo Nix would have been immune to making a bad decision at that spot. I mean, he certainly, again, with the way that Sean Payton has coached him up, do you think Bo Nix just eats the sack in that situation? I don't think that he does. Does he execute a better push of the football? Is it a forward pass and not a backwards one? I don't. I look at the 4th and 1 and the 3rd and 4 as more like Bo Nix would have done better, or would have given the Broncos a chance to do better in those two situations. But maybe you feel like Bo Nix would not have tried to push that ball. I just know Bo Nix keeps talking about not taking sacks, and he's made bad decisions with the football to avoid sacks. But I think overall, the lack of escapability from Jarrett Stidham as opposed to what you have with Bo Nix played an important role in that football game. And again, as throwers of the football, the pick in the second half, right? The one to Christian Gonzalez. I could see Bo Nix throwing that pick. I could. So as throwers of the football, that's where I didn't think there would be as much of a drop-off when it comes to running. I thought there would be, which makes the 4th down and 1 call all the more egregious because you have a guy that can't go to plan B, that can't maybe bail you out or give you something else. Jarrett Stidham was going to throw that ball. That was the only way they were going to convert. With Bo Nix, I feel like that's a call that Sean Payton might make, which would be the wrong call, but Bo Nix would have a chance to bail you out. Here's Sean Payton on Jarrett Stidham and how he played overall.
He hit Mims earlier, if you recall.
Oh, wait. No, that's not the right one. Where's Here's Peyton on the second turnover, the pick.
He hit Mims earlier, if you recall. And so, you have your backside read, your front side read. On the turnover, I know it was reviewed. It's always hard from the field level as a backward pass. Then that was a frustrating thing. When you play that back and forth, we were playing well enough defensively where, so that was a big play.
Absolutely it was. And Jared Stidham certainly has to bear some of the responsibility of yesterday's loss because of that decision. Again, I go back to 4th and 1 and say, and 2, to some extent, who do you think you should hold to a higher standard in those moments? Right, just looking at it. Sean Payne on his play call or Jared Stidham on the backwards pass. Like, who do you expect more out of? That's part of it, too, here, why I put the 4th and 1 above the backwards pass. Here is Sean Payton overall on the effort of Jared Stidham in the AFC Championship.
Oh, I thought he fought hard in tough conditions. I think we're going to look at the film. I know this. I'm going to look at it and be critical of myself. And I think there were a number of things that we just had to do better. We didn't finish some runs. We dropped some passes again. Felt like that was a problem all year. Early when we had the momentum, we didn't it felt like, let's just say, most of the first half, and we didn't come away with enough having had that momentum and that field position.
It sure feels like Sean Payton believed if he had Bo Nix, he would have won that game. But wasn't it Sean Payton that claimed all week that Jared Stidham was the least of the Broncos' concerns? And look, we knew it was going to impact the Broncos to some extent, not having Bo Nix. It would be disrespectful to Bo Nix and what he has meant to the Denver Broncos to say that they don't miss a beat. It's just that the very thing that Bo Nix does, I think, much better than Jared Stidham, would have served the Broncos well at 2 critical junctures of the football game. It just, with the weather, it just turned into a low event game. There just weren't that many plays, not enough plays to rebound from a mistake like the 4th and 1 or like the backwards pass or missing the field goal. But look, as unsatisfying as this might be, it's football, right? Broncos are hardly the first team to be without their quarterback. Now, there have been fewer times throughout history where teams have been without their starting quarterback at this juncture of the season, but it happens and you adjust. And that's what I keep going back to. Like, okay, Jared Stidham, clearly the big payday coming his way and all of that other stuff, that's not happening now. He's safe as being Bo Nix's backup for another year. So in that way, he did squander an opportunity in some ways. But I keep going back to Sean Payton talking about how Stidham would be the least of the Broncos' concerns. And I guess in the end, he wasn't the most of their concerns. Sean Payton was the most of my concern with that football game. I thought that Sean Payton would adjust accordingly. That's what I think me and others were banking on. Jared Stidham, knowing Jared Stidham's strengths and weaknesses and playing to it. And I didn't see a game plan or play calling that reflected that. It looked like Sean Payton was calling a game for Bo Nix. Maybe a few more runs, maybe. But for the most part, as far as what he was asking Jared Stidham to do, didn't seem that much different than what he asked Bo Nix to do. And I thought he would be able to do this, but it was necessary for him to adjust. It just didn't look like he did. So the 4th and 1, backwards pass. Which do you think ultimately cost the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship? 719-247-1313. You could call or text in your thoughts. And, of course, you can also drop a comment on the live stream, and I will get to those comments coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. All right, let's open it up here. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text in the show. You can also drop a comment on the live stream, which Eric has. Eric, as we did with Jersey J last week, Jersey J called his shot. He was taking some slings and arrows for his thoughts that Josh Allen would turn the ball over a bunch, and that's exactly what he did. So Eric gets in here and gets his flowers because he was not buying the Stiddy hype and thought that the Broncos would ultimately fall, and says on Facebook, according to Sean Payton, Stidham isn't a backup QB. He has 2 starting QBs on his roster, remember? Yeah, I can't help but feel like hubris, overconfidence, that those things didn't play into, especially on that 4th and 1. There were certainly differences between Jared Stidham and Bo Nix. And my thought was that Sean Payton would highlight what Jared Stidham does well and minimize what he doesn't do well. And there were multiple times in that game where having a running quarterback, I mean, look at the other side of the football. Like Drake May, that's almost all he did was run. But that was smart by Mike Vrabel, right? He had a quarterback that was, as Fred mentioned earlier, was a little bit shook after what happened against Houston and how often he turned the ball over and the heat that he took in New England because of it. So Mike Vrabel gave him a chance to run the ball. Eric continues, his ego got in the way. He wanted to show everyone how smart he is and how good of a coach he is by sticking it to the Patriots with a backup quarterback. I can't say that you're wrong. Because I heard Sean Payton try to justify going for it on 4th and 1, and just none of it really registered with me. None of it seemed like a justification for going for it there. Might very well be that. This from my buddy Mark Moses. I still can't get over how the Broncos lost that game yesterday. Well, Mark, you're got a lot of people out here that certainly can't get over that. Let's see. This from the 719. The next offensive series after the backwards pass, Peyton calls 3 drop back passes, all unsuccessful. What about a quick position pass? Get the rhythm going. Could it be fair to say that after that, because it was such an egregious turnover, right? It was jarring to see Jared Stidham try to do that. I mean, there's a balance between, allowing your guy to get some confidence back and doing the smart thing. And I just feel like Sean Payton had trouble walking that line throughout the game. To the texter's point. How about an easy completion? How about something that minimizes the ability for New England to get into the backfield? Yeah, I don't know that the Broncos recovered, and Sean Payton in particular recovered well from that. But that's also not incredibly surprising given how jarring and how egregiously bad that turnover was by Jared Stidham. This coming in from the 719. Very disappointing day and game for the Broncos fans. I think never did everything they could to lose that game with the defense playing the way they did. I think the 4th and 1 that early in the game had to be a field goal, and going up 2 scores is huge in a championship game. And with that field goal, we may have never even seen that backwards pass. Momentum is a huge thing. We all know that, and we lost it on that play. Adds, I was in a room with about 30 people. Not one of those people wanted Denver to go for that 4th and 1. Not one. And that's what I'm saying, because we had a texter earlier, I think Gary, that said, look, if Sean Payton goes for that, everyone is singing his praises. I don't know that that's the case. And it's not the benefit of hindsight. So we got me, got Jim Arthur, got Mike Florio, got Mitchell Schwartz. I saw him, former Chiefs lineman on Twitter. Tony Romo, the texter, the 30 people in the room with him. Like, I'm trying to find the person that in the moment thought that it was the right call to go for it on 4th and 1. I haven't found them yet. Sean Payton's standing by himself in this. So it's not like every 4th down call that we get. It's not even like some of the Dan Campbell ones. Everybody in that moment was like, why isn't he kicking the field goal? As far as the necessary adjustment going from Bo Nix to Jared Stidham, this coming in from the Lance, Peyton doesn't adjust for anyone. He made that clear with Russ. He does what he does and gets players that can fit. He had made it clear he doesn't adjust. Not even a little bit, though. Like, your point is well taken. Like with Russell Wilson, there was a zero tolerance policy. He was like, no way. I don't care what his contract is. This guy is not my guy. But Jared Stidham is his guy. And part of the reason is because Jared Stidham can do a better job in Sean Payton's offense than Russell Wilson. But the idea that, and I get what you're saying, Lance, but in practice, your job is to adjust. Like you just have to do a little bit. You don't think that Sean Payton adjusted, I should say, when Teddy Bridgewater took over for Drew Brees? Or even better example, Taysom Hill? I watched those games. He didn't ask Taysom Hill to do what Drew Brees did. So, like, I get what you're saying. He is quite rigid when it comes to his quarterbacks and what he wants them to do. And we talked about this last week, how there have been times where it feels like Sean Payton is wrestling with himself over highlighting the strengths of Bo Nix and letting Bo Nix do what he does best and making Bo Nix fit into his offense and having Bo Nix do the things he did. But the stage just required you to bend a little bit. The situation required that. And what you're saying, Lance, isn't wrong, but shouldn't it be? If there was a game where Sean Payton gave in a little bit. I know I've talked about Sean Payton doing everything his way when he got to Denver. Russell Wilson, he shipped him out and got the Penners to do everything he wanted them to do. But, I mean, there are exceptions to every rule. And wasn't starting a backup quarterback who hadn't thrown the ball in 700 and however many days in a live football game, isn't that the exception to the rule? And I'm saying this stuff, and I guess in many ways, it's not. I shouldn't be surprised. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, but I am. Because also the mark of a good coach, and Sean Payton is a good coach. Like, that's one thing out of all of this. Not that anyone has suggested it, but let me launch a preemptive strike here. Broncos aren't in that game without Sean Payton. Broncos aren't the AFC's number one seed without Sean Payton. So this doesn't undo everything. And all of a sudden, Sean Payton's not a good coach. but it was a huge error, a huge calculation gone wrong. And just because he is the number one reason that the Denver Broncos were playing in that game yesterday, he can also be the number one reason why they lost it. And I put that decision on 4th and 1 above everything else. The weather, the backwards pass, the missed field goal, the blocked field goal, all of it. This from the 575. Would Sean have weakened Stiddy's confidence if he had mentioned Stiddy's potential shortcomings? That's not what. There's what you say and there's what you do. No, yes, Sean Payton, to answer your question, Sean Payton should not have come out and said, Jarrett Stidham's not a better runner, but that doesn't mean that you can't put him in a situation where he doesn't have to run. Like, nobody's asking Sean Payton to sit up there at the podium and just trash Jarrett Stidham all week. And it's not even, it's adjusting. It's adjusting to your personnel. This is not about Jarrett Stidham being worse or better or the same as Bo Nix. This is about taking what Jarrett Stidham does well and what he doesn't, which every quarterback has, from Patrick Mahomes on down. Everybody has something they don't do as well as everything else. And it's a coach's job. He doesn't have to speak to it. He doesn't have to talk about it. But his game planning can do a little bit of the talking and say, I'm not going to put Jarrett Stidham in those positions. And even if you didn't want to acknowledge that Jarrett Stidham was any lesser of a quarterback than Bo Nix, throw in the fact that he hadn't thrown a pass in 2 years. Like, that could be the justification. It's not about talent. It's about experience. It's about how long Jarrett Stidham has been without throwing a pass. Or with the 4th and 1, throw all of that stuff out. The 4th and 1 is a bad decision, whether it's Jarrett Stidham or Bo Nix. Now, we could go a little bit deeper into it and talk about what Bo Nix, like I just did, about what Bo Nix may have been able to do on that play that Jarrett Stidham couldn't, but it was the wrong call of Bo Nix as his quarterback. I shouldn't be shocked, but I am. I really am. A couple more texts and then we'll take a break here. Albert says the two big plays that went against the Broncos were early enough to overcome. The Broncos just lost. But that goes back to the weather thing. Was there truly enough plays left in that game for the Broncos to recover from 4th and 1? Because normally I would be with you. But like, you have to acknowledge first and foremost that flipped the game. Right? That cannot be argued. And I'm not saying you're arguing against it. But as long as we're on the same page when it comes to that, then let's go a step further. Once that weather came in, that was it for the game. Whether you knew it in the moment or wanted to acknowledge it in the moment or not, the game was over. What had transpired before that, that was going to be it. So I think that it makes even more the 4th and 1 worthy of criticism and even something more worth pointing at as why the Broncos lost this game, because there just weren't enough plays after that left in that game. If the game would have been played in the new Broncos Stadium with the retractable roof, there would have been. So I think it all kind of plays in to each other. It was the domino effect that the 4th and 1 created, leading into a blizzard that neither team could really do anything in terms of scoring points. This from the 719. All right, I got my prediction wrong. He put 20-17. Maybe a different perspective on Sean Payton going for it on 4th and 1, even though even in hindsight, I wish he would have taken the field goal. But if I know Peyton well enough over his few seasons with the Broncos, I think he realized that he didn't have his starting quarterback, and he saw that he had a chance to put a nail in the coffin and go up possibly 14-zip, which I think would have sealed it for us. I think, of course, hindsight being 2020, but I think that's possibly where he was coming from, and I don't blame him. Let me ask this question. Was 10-0 a world of difference? Let me put it this way. Is the difference between 10-0 and 14-0 greater or less than the difference between 10-0 and 7-0? Because to your point about, and that was part of Sean Payton's justification, I think if you listen to it, and I'll play it again at the top of the hour during what's driving the show, I think that's what Sean Payton was aiming at. Man, if we go up 14, they're done. I'm not so sure that if you go up 10-0, they're not done. The way the rest of the game played out, and even the way the game was played out. I don't want to be too much about the weather and everything else. In that moment, you have to calculate the risk reward. And the reward was, 14-0 would have been better than 10-0. But would it have been a greater gain than the risk side of this, that what you lost in not getting those points and making it a 2-possession game? It's the risk reward that you balance, and I don't think Sean Payton chose the right side of the ledger there. I think 10-0 would have been just dandy with the fact that New England wasn't doing anything in that game, would have been down by 2 scores. The Broncos would have been able to sustain anything that New England would have been able to do on their next drive. Right? They go down and score a touchdown. Okay, up 10-7. All good here. And yes, the backwards pass was absolutely a part of that. Again, the domino effect. It started with the 4th and 1. I just flat out chose it wrong. It was just the wrong call. This from the 719. You just don't gamble that early in the game with the defense we had. Agreed. 719 24/7 1313. More of your text, calls, comments on a very, any way that the Broncos would have lost that game would have been a bitter pill. But the way that they lost, I think, makes it even more difficult to stomach if you're a Broncos fan. But that's what this show is here for. Let it all out. We've all been there. More Drive Time Sports after this. This coming in on Twitter, which, by the way, I'm at Gingerly Tweets if you ever want to chat outside of the show or even during the show. I'm there. This is from at NorthJR79. Peyton should have taken the field goal to go up 10-0. This would have forced the Patriots to get 2 touchdowns to beat them, and Denver's defense would have prevented that. Peyton went to the Dan Campbell school of being overly aggressive, and it cost them a trip to the Super Bowl. Agreed, and there will be more on that coming up at the top of the hour. But now I feel like it's safe to do this because we've spent, an hour and 47 minutes establishing that the officials are not anywhere close to the reason why that game went the way it did. So I think we're in a safe space now. We're not talking about officiating like we did last Monday and with the whole Brandon Cooks play. I will go to my grave contending that Drake May did not get that first down. That the one that led to a field goal, the 4th and 1 there, that was Josh Allen against the Chiefs all over again. But the thing was, we were supposed to advance past this. We were supposed to understand that with 22 large human beings all piled up, it's very difficult to see if Drake May got that first down, just like Josh Allen against the Chiefs last year. So they put this microchip in the ball, right? That's supposed to fix it. Here's the problem. That only eliminates the chain gang. It does not actually fix the problem. And that was kind of lost, with the virtual measurements, like, oh, this is going to, a play like with Josh Allen against the Chiefs last year in the playoffs. We're not going to have that again because they can track where the ball is in relationship to the first down marker. That's not what they use it for. They use it so in case one of the chain gang guys like trips and falls and gets back up, but he's not running straight, or he kind of meanders because he had a little bit too much to drink the night before, that they only use it to eliminate the chain gang. They don't actually use this technology to decide whether Drake May actually broke the plane of the first down line, which doesn't that sound dumb? Doesn't that sound like that's not what we were asking for after the Josh Allen Chiefs game? Although, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that call last year went the way it did. But even I said that we got to improve this technology. We have it. Let's use it. And I'm usually an anti-technology guy in sports. But usually that's replay review. I'm for automatic balls and strikes in baseball, and I'm for using the microchip in the football, the GPS technology, to decide whether Drake May made it, because Sean Payton signaled what everyone was signaling. Look at the above shot. Look at the sky cam. You look at that, it doesn't look like Drake May got that first down. And in a game that finished 10-7, that was not an insignificant moment. But it's hard to blame the officials in a situation like that because I legitimately don't know how they can tell. But the NFL was supposed to institute technology to get around that. I don't think he got there. But in the massive humanity that there was, I don't know that the poor officials on the field are supposed to be able to tell that. And it's part of the reason why everyone wanted the tush push banned. Not the main reason, but it was part of it. The main reason was, let's be honest, because nobody could stop it. But it's also partly because if Jalen Hurts didn't clearly get past the line, be very difficult to tell with a bunch of 300-pounders all piled up on top of each other. There were a couple of officiating moments in that game. One thing I have not seen, and I think that's a good thing. Look, even if you don't think when you're watching the replay that Jared Stem threw that backwards, and maybe today's not the day to say this. Maybe I'll let you cool down a little bit more. Wasn't that play so egregiously bad? Like he deserved to have that called a fumble? Like it was such a bad play. To be bailed out by a technicality would have felt like justice hadn't been done. But I do think it was a backwards pass. I do. And Sean Payton not being vociferous in his, fighting that call tells me that he doesn't have a huge problem with that being called a backwards pass. It looked, I think they got it right. But there were a couple moments in that game where the calls mattered a lot. Not a ton of penalties, though, yesterday. Notice that. But again, it goes back to my point. There just weren't enough plays in the game. Not that much happened in the game. If there would have been more plays, more action, like maybe there would have been more penalties, but there wasn't. But I don't think Drake May got there. And look, it ended up being a field goal, not a touchdown, so not the worst case scenario. And I think most people understand, like, if you're going to be upset about it, and I am to an extent, because once again, this is a sports league that is utilizing technology in the wrong way. I don't care about the chain gang. Like, I want the ball to be placed in the right spot. That's what I want. Like, if you want it, like the chain gang thing is on top of it. Right? And it's all, and also you won't have to do the chain gang. Okay, fine. But what's it supposed to combat first and foremost? It's supposed to be able to find where the ball is under 22, 200 plus 200 to 300 pound people. That's what it's supposed to be used for. Now, that's way down on the list of conversations we're having today, but we got a 3-hour program, got some time. I don't think Drake May got there. And we talk about how important momentum was in that football game because of the 4th and 1. That would have been a moment where the Broncos could get back a little bit more momentum, stopping them on 4th down. I don't know if it was right or wrong. I kind of feel like it was wrong, but I can't see. If only there was a piece of technology that would help us. More Drive Time Sports after this. Hello there. Welcome in. Hour 3 on a difficult Monday if you're a Broncos fan as their season comes to an end in the AFC Championship. The 3 stories that are driving the show will all be about that game, and I encourage you to interact with the show. Give your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Shouts to those of you watching the show on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at XTRA Sports 1300 or at 740 KVOR. You can drop a comment and interact there as well. Without further ado, here are the 3 stories out of yesterday that are driving the show. All right, we go in order from what cost the Broncos the most in the AFC Championship to what cost them perhaps the least. Here's Sean Payton with story number 1.
There's always regrets, you know. Yeah, I mean, look, I felt like, here we are, 4th and 1. We felt close enough that and it's also a call you make based on the team you're playing and how what you're watching on the other side of the ball. So yeah, there'll always be second thoughts.
That is Sean Payton attempting to justify the 4th and 1 he went for with the Denver Broncos up 7 early in that game against New England, except it wasn't early. Right? It wasn't because of what came later in that game, what Mother Nature provided, but just in the moment, don't want to get straight too far. The fact of the matter was that to that point in the game, the New England Patriots had done nothing to warrant any level of confidence that they were going to get things going against the Denver Broncos defense. Drake May turned the ball over too much, fumbled it too much the week before. There wasn't, in the way that they had started off so slow, there was nothing going for the New England Patriots at that time. And the risk reward is the reward, you get it, and then what? You still have to go and score a touchdown. Like, this wasn't 4th and goal at the 1. Okay, there would still be yards they would have to get in order to get the touchdown that Sean Payton was going for. And the play call he made was not to get a touchdown. It was just to get the 4th and 1. The risk that you run in that situation, we saw play out. You gave the Patriots a life. You gave them a boost. Just like when you kill off a power play in hockey, it creates momentum for yourself. That created momentum for New England, momentum that they would never give up. The pendulum did not swing the Broncos' way the rest of the game. And I don't even need to bring up the weather to say why it was a bad call. That was a game that we knew was going to most likely come down to the wire. Broncos weren't going to blow out the New England Patriots. But even going up 10-0, given the fact New England had done nothing to that point, would have been a large mountain to climb. It would have been. And it just, even though Sean Payton did not make an analytics-based argument, I fully expected him to, because the idea that the feel for the game in that moment was to go for it. It wasn't. And the opposition to Sean Payton, not afterwards, as it was happening, it was almost universal. Why isn't Sean Payton taking the points? This isn't about hindsight. In hindsight, it looks worse. But it wasn't the right call, and the domino effect that it caused led to the Denver Broncos losing that football game. It was the wrong call, and it was especially the wrong call with Jarrett Stidham as your quarterback. It was the exact thing that I warned all week the Denver Broncos could not do, and that was put Jarrett Stidham in a position where he had to be the hero and come from behind in the fourth quarter. And if you kick that field goal, he's probably not in that situation. And you're even asking him to be the hero by calling that play. Go make a play, Stiddy. It was just the wrong call and was the reason above everything else on why the Denver Broncos lost that football game. And for Sean Payton to be the guy to put his quarterback in the bad position, that's what's most shocking about it. Because I thought he would know better. And he didn't. And it absolutely helped cost the Denver Broncos that football game. Now, something that came later in that game, not that much later, is the subject of story number 2.
I can't put our team in a bad position like that. I was trying to throw it away to TB. He was in the area, and the pressure. He just got up on me real fast, and I was just trying to get rid of it. And like I said, I can't put the ball in the, in a position like that. So that was completely on me.
That was the second domino to fall. Jarrett Stidham talking about the backwards pass that gave New England the ball. They should have had a scoop and score there. Can you imagine the conversation if New England gets stopped and does not score a touchdown on the ensuing drive, that the referees blew the play dead when they shouldn't have? But the second domino to fall was Jarrett Stidham making that incomprehensible decision to try and simply push the ball with two hands in the general direction of a teammate. And the area that guy was in was a pretty big area. I don't know how Jarrett Stidham would have been able to get it even at the feet. He was trying to avoid intentional grounding is basically what he's saying. But that area, it would be a generous area. And that ball would have fallen way short. I think that there are other plays in the game where if the Broncos have Bo Nix, maybe they would have been better off. I can't say that is the one. I can't, because Sean Payton, just programs his quarterbacks don't take sacks. And that was one of the big concerns going into the game, with Jarrett Stidham took too many sacks the last time we saw him on the field. I don't know that Bo Nix doesn't try to do the same thing. I really don't. It would be an easy spot for me to go, well, see, if Bo Nix was in, that would have never happened. I can't say that with great authority, because I know how Bo Nix thinks. And Bo Nix would be like, I can't take a sack here. And he's taken in bad intentional grounding penalties to avoid sacks. So I think you could look at the game overall and think that the Broncos could have very well won that game had Bo Nix started. I don't think that's the play you could point at, though. I look at the 4th and 1, and maybe Bo Nix with his legs being able to bail out the terrible decision that Sean Payton made. Or Bo Nix's ability to take that 3rd and 4 and at least make it less than a 4th and 6 for Will Lutz to have a longer field goal at the end of the half. Like, there are a couple of moments in that game where you say, with Bo Nix, maybe it would have been different. And in a game that was so close, maybe that makes the ultimate difference. But that decision by Jared Stidham and that turnover absolutely was a huge reason why they lost that football game. It was the second domino. The first was the 4th and 1. That gave momentum to New England, took it away from the Denver Broncos. And then Jared Stidham, I guess Sean Payton opened the door with the 4th and 1. Jared Stidham pulled it wide open with that play. That gave New England their first touchdown. And then domino number 3 was really what kept the Denver Broncos from having any chance to win that game late.
I know we talked a lot about footing, ball security, as the conditions changed, that became something that our players had to be, real mindful of. There were certain throws, though, that we weren't going to call, we just didn't do enough in the run game or in the pass game.
Because of the weather that came in that second half, midway through the third quarter, it makes Jared Stidham's turnover, it makes Sean Payton's decision to go for it in 4th and 1 that much worse. Because essentially what you saw play out in Denver yesterday was a half of a football game. A half of a football game that needed overtime. Right? The half of a game that played out, it was 7-7. Well, football games don't end in a tie. Got to go to overtime. Patriots kicked the field goal, and that was it. That was always going to be it. Nobody was going to score any more points in that weather. So it makes the decision to go for it on 4th and 1, and it makes Jared Stidham's decision to try and push the ball forward when he just should have taken a sack all much worse. Makes them more consequential, those things that happen, because they both happened in the first half. And you would think, they have the whole second half to recover. No, they didn't, not with that storm. And that retractable roof stadium that Greg Penner is getting ready to build at Burnham Yard in Denver, it cannot get here fast enough. Because what we saw through the last quarter and a half of football would not be the case if they were playing with the retractable roof. Because they probably would have already closed it, because it would have been miserable for the fans. And if you went up to that game, you have my undying respect. Because that would have been miserable. But this is why I don't like Mother Nature being a main character in these stories. I just don't. And it took the biggest game. We only got 3 of these left. We had AFC Championship, NFC Championship, Super Bowl. That's it for the entire football season. I would like to have a full 4-quarter game, not a half of a game. But Mother Nature in that weather cut that game down to a half of a game with a little bit of extra time for New England to kick that field goal and win the game. It's hard for me to find fault in Jared Stidham throwing that interception. I don't know if anybody makes that throw. And it's not why the Denver Broncos lost. But it really killed any realistic opportunity for them to pull a rabbit out of a hat. I don't know that Jared Stidham was capable of doing that. In fact, I don't think that he was. But I at least like to see him try. I at least like him to get a fair shake. And this would be my take if the Patriots would have won. Or I mean if the Broncos would have won. I just don't like it. Maybe I'm not a football purist. That's fine. I can accept that. I've been called worse. But I don't like the fact that Mother Nature had such a say in that game. And it's why the NFL does not put its most important game in Buffalo or in Denver for that matter. And it just, as a consumer, it sucked. I don't like it's not aesthetically pleasing. It's not enjoyable for me to watch these snow games. It's not. For some people, it might be, but it's not for me. And you can't say that it didn't greatly impact that football game and make it really unrealistic that the Denver Broncos were going to come back and win that game. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. But first, a word from the good folks at Synergenics and Low T Center. Guys, did you know that low testosterone can cause fatigue, lack of focus, and just feeling off? Can contribute to that. Many men don't realize that it's low T that's causing these things until they get tested. At Synergenics and Low T Center, the TRT test is free for a limited time. If your levels are low, they offer testosterone replacement therapy with real medication, not compounded hormones like some other places will give you, and expert care because they are the experts in this field. And they're not just for the fellas. Ladies, you can take your hormone test at Synergenics and Low T Center. It's now just $99, normally $299. So take control of your health today. Walk in or book an appointment at getmyhealthfix.com. Synergenics and Low T Center, where real results happen. your reaction to the Denver Broncos losing the AFC Championship yesterday to the New England Patriots. You could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313 or drop a comment on the live stream on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. This coming in from Fred. If Knicks had played, Denver would have won, I think. But if the weather hadn't hit, I think Stidham would have won, and he was heading for a blowout. Pats were completely outplayed in the first half. May would have continued to be gun shy and Stidham not, and stadium noise would have been louder for the Bronx. I don't think that the one thing I have to disagree with most is the idea that the Broncos were heading for a blowout. I think Sean Payton calling the 4th and 1 or going for it on 4th and 1 and not getting it threw away. And I didn't even think that the Broncos were going to blow out New England at any point in that game. When I say that, you know, I'm talking about 10-0, 13-0, whatever it would have been. If, you know, Will Lutz makes his field goal or whatever, but let's just say they take the points, everything else stays the same, 10-0 going into, well, not everything because Drake May doesn't score the touchdown. But the idea that you're up 10-0, I don't think that the Broncos tack on a whole lot after that. I really don't. I don't think that the Broncos were at any point heading for a blowout. But you saw how difficult it was for the Denver Broncos to wrestle any momentum back from the New England Patriots. Whether or no weather, what was your confidence level in New England getting momentum in that football game, given what you had seen to that point? And we can't know, you know, how the rest of the game would have played out. But I'm not talking about the Broncos on their way to a blowout. I'm saying 10-0, 13-0. That might have been good as done. That game might have ended 13-7. 17-10. But what I can say about the weather is that it killed any momentum, any chance, I should say, that the Broncos had no momentum. It killed any chance for them to come back in that game, which makes the 4th and 1 call all the more egregious because the game was really only 2.5 quarters. This from the 719. All I heard from Broncos fans all week is that Stidham is on the same level as Nick. So according to them, I would say no, the Broncos don't win with Knicks. I grant that I'm sure some people probably got a little bit carried away. I will say that in the conversations that we had, I feel like we were quite measured. And I said, maybe you want to take this as a, you know, slight on Bo Nix, that Jared Stidham and Bo Nix aren't that much different than one another, or Bo Nix isn't that much better than Jared Stidham. I think most people thought, I think the premise was the Broncos can still win this game. This is not the Bills losing Josh Allen. This is not the Chiefs losing Patrick Mahomes. This is not the Ravens losing Lamar Jackson, or the Bengals losing Joe Burrow, or the Rams losing Matthew Stafford, or apparently the Seahawks losing Sam Darnold. I think most people had that as the idea. They could still find a way with all the other stuff that they had going for them, home field, defense, and you thought Sean Payton. But Sean Payton did not look like he adjusted one bit for the fact that he had Jared Stidham, and the place where the aspect of Jared Stidham's game where he needed to adjust the most was knowing that Jared Stidham would not have the escapability of Bo Nix. I think most rational people understood that the Broncos were not in a better position or even the same position with Jared Stidham. But was there wiggle room in there for the Broncos to still win? I thought so. But I also thought that Sean Payton was going to have a little bit more feel for the game and understanding that he could still make Jared Stidham look really good without putting him in positions where there's a high degree of probability that he would fail. This from the 719. Peyton let his ego get in the way again. I think it's fair. I mean, really, I think you got to say one thing or another. Either you got to say that Sean Payton, and since we're talking about fourth downs, like Dan Campbell, is just not able to handle that stage, or it was ego getting in the way. I think one of those two things has to be true. And the guy has won a Super Bowl. So I have a hard time believing the stage was too big, or he doesn't have situational awareness and feel for the game. That's why I go back to, I think it was hubris. I think it was trying to send a message. And it was a message that did not need to be sent. And I doubt the ability of Jared Stidham delivering that message. Hubris, ego, overconfidence. Break out the thesaurus. Something in that general realm was at play on that 4th and 1. It was. This is from Ben. Longtime Bronco fan. Once the Patriots started dialing up the pressure, Stidham could not withstand it. It showed that he's only played a few games in the last 4 years. He just does not have the game time experience, nor he hasn't had the opportunity to deal with the speed of the NFL and a live game. Yeah, and I go back and I'll throw the escapability on top of it. He just didn't have the ability to run himself out of that. I saw multiple situations that, including the shovel pass or whatever you want to call it, the backwards pass, where I think Bo Nix might have made a bad decision in those moments. But with Bo Nix's legs, he's ran himself out of some bad situations. So I think you're right, and that's the first half of that. The second half of that, though, is that he doesn't have the ability to run himself out of that trouble. And Bo Nix does, and has shown it on occasion. Where I can't, here's the one thing, and Nick Benito had some comments yesterday. And I get it. A lot of teams losing the way they did would want to say that they were the better team. I don't want to do that. And I find it kind of ironic, given the way the Broncos season has played out, that it ends with the Denver Broncos swearing that they are the better team. Because how many Sundays, or more accurately Mondays, when you and I get together, have we gone, Man, the Broncos won that game, but I don't know if they're actually the better team. Right? Philadelphia, the Giants game. I mean, the Broncos made a living this year winning games where the opponent would swear that they were better. But therein lies the identity of this Denver Broncos team and why that identity went out the window yesterday. The Broncos all season have been the ones to say, you're going to make the mistakes, not us. We're going to have better situational awareness. We're going to be more disciplined. We're going to cut down on the mistakes, and you're going to be the one that makes the mistakes, that has a lack of situational awareness. So I'm sorry, if you want credit for the Broncos regular season and how they got to that game yesterday, and acknowledging that the way they won games was not as fluky as it may seem, that there's a very intentional way about their business that the Denver Broncos go, then you have to be fair to New England from yesterday and say, no, you weren't the better team. You weren't the better team. Because if you were the better team, you would have had better situational awareness and know that going up 10-0 is just as good as going up 14-0. That it was necessary to keep New England down and not give them hope or life or whatever you want to call it. So I heard Nick Benito's comments and I go, it's unfair to New England, and it's also having a little bit of a lack of self-awareness, because how many games this season did the Denver Broncos demand their respect and say, keep doubting us, right? Like they embraced the idea that no one believed in them, but at the same time, they wanted that respect. They claim that they were the better team. No, we know what we're doing. We have a formula here. We win these games this way on purpose. That fight for respect that the Broncos have been battling all year long, and yet they're the ones sitting at their locker room stalls failing to give enough credit to their opponent for having the situational awareness, for being the team that's less prone to mistakes. No, New England was better yesterday. You want to talk about that you were the more talented team? I don't know, maybe you were. But guess what? You're not more talented than Philadelphia is. You won that game. So to say that, to claim that you're the better team, no, New England was better yesterday. Drake May didn't throw a backwards pass. Jared Stidham did. Mike Vrabel didn't make the same decision Sean Payton did. I know he went for it on a 4th and 1. But not that 4th and 1. And the play call, if you say all 4th down and 1 calls are made or going decisions to go for it are equal, well, Mike Vrabel did it too. Okay, but he has a big giant quarterback that he can shove across the first down. Why didn't Sean Payton run it? I mean, I know the answer. It's because Jared Stidham can't run it like Bo Nix can. And Bo Nix isn't built like Drake May or Josh Allen. But doesn't therein lie why it was the wrong decision? If the Broncos would have had some different personnel on the field or some different ability, then the 4th and 1 call is not as bad. But I understand it. And moments after a game, I'm certainly not going to, rake Nick Benito over the coals for making a comment like that. But the fact of the matter is, no, you weren't the better team yesterday. The better team does not give the game away. The more talented team might, but there's power in words. It's not semantics. You could say that you have more talent. That doesn't make you the better team. And the team that should know that better than anyone is the Denver Broncos, because they have gone up against teams with more talent than them and won the game. Why? Better coach, more disciplined, all this stuff, which makes you the better team on that given day. It's not a best 4 out of 7. Maybe the Denver Broncos win a 7-game series. That's not the way this game works. And I go back to Sean Payton. Sean Payton's own words this week. He talked about in games like this, so often teams lose it rather than win it. Gotta give Sean Payton credit. He called it. But that's not supposed to be the Denver Broncos. It's supposed to be the team that got in only because CJ Stroud turned the ball over an ungodly amount. It's supposed to be Drake May making those terrible decisions. Sean Payton's supposed to outcoach Mike Vrabel. Yeah, outcoach Mike Vrabel. And Drake May played mistake-free football. He almost made a mistake. One of his first passes was a terrible decision with the football. Broncos weren't the better team yesterday. Because if that's the case, then we need to go back and look at all of these games that the Broncos pulled out in the fourth quarter and wonder if the Denver Broncos were the better team on that day. 719-24/7. 1313. More of your thoughts. We'll close out the show with some of your thoughts on the Broncos' loss in the AFC Championship. You're listening to 740 KVOR in Extra Sports 1300. Closing out with some more of your thoughts on the AFC Championship. Of course, we're not even close to finished talking about this game. Perhaps it's more as the week progresses, looking into the future and what the Broncos don't have and how they try to get back to this stage next year and beyond. But in the meantime, this is from Steve, and I'm glad you texted in, Steve, because I wanted this perspective, because it didn't seem like anybody knew what was coming weather-wise. Forecast didn't have it. Didn't look like Sean Payton coached like it. But here's Steve saying, I sit in the East stands. We all saw the storm coming. Kick the damn field goal. Yeah, I would be, and nobody asked yesterday whether they knew that a storm was coming. Like, I'm genuinely wondering, was there any Doppler radar telling them, like, hey, it's going to get, I know the forecast to begin the day wasn't this way, but now it is. I mean, don't those things change minute by minute? This from the 719. The Broncos offensive line got worked yesterday. Yeah, I got another text that the offensive line should know how to run block. I know it wasn't incredibly effective, but RJ Harvey had 9 carries in the first half and 4 in the second. I'm not saying you keep beating your head against the wall. I thought RJ Harvey found some creases. Like, I don't know why the Broncos offensive line can't. They opened up bigger holes against Buffalo. And I think this is where you got to give some credit to New England. Right? But I thought RJ Harvey found some seams for some positive gains. Like, sometimes you got to run the ball to keep the other team honest. And sometimes you got to push through a little bit. It's a fine line, I know. But sometimes you got to stay committed to it so the other team can't tee off on you. But the Broncos were not able to run the ball, I think, as effectively as they needed to, certainly. But I thought RJ Harvey was running the ball well. It's just that there weren't not a lot opened up for him. He had, though, they were really tough yards that he had to get. But I thought he got some of them in the first half, and then the second half he gets 4 carries. But again, you lop off the entire fourth quarter, right? Because of the weather, because the weather would impact the run game as well. I think that's definitely where you got. I think you give credit to New England for the game management, for the play calling with Drake May, not putting him in a position to have to throw the ball. And I think you got to give credit to their defense. Because there were bigger holes to run through against Buffalo than there were New England. This from the 719. I'm not a Broncos fan and not a Patriots fan. I thought it was a good game, and it was good to see it cleanly called by the referees because I've watched the Broncos get many gifts this year from the referees. Yeah, we talked about the officiating, but not in that way. Like, I don't expect the referees to be able to truly see if Drake May got that first down on the 4th and 1. But the NFL should use the technology they have that they can use appropriately and effectively. And that's the exact situation where they could, and they can't, or they don't want to. But yeah, it wasn't certainly compared to last week. Officiating or calls made by the referees were way low on the list, and they were near the top of the conversation last week. Tom, first of all, congratulations to your Patriots. Says, Kaufman, please tell me you're picking the Seahawks. Here's some good news. Not only am I picking the Seahawks, I don't believe. Now, I reserve the right to change my mind. We got 2 weeks. My initial reaction to yesterday is the same as it was going in to Sunday. I think the 2 superior teams are on the other side of the bracket. And I do not expect it to be a completely compelling football game in the next couple of weeks. So yes, I am picking Seattle. Or maybe I'll just pick the Patriots out of spite, just to spite you, Tom. Mean. No, I am taking Seattle. Absolutely. That'll do it for the show today. Appreciate the interaction. We'll continue the conversation tomorrow at 3, but we'll start looking ahead. What do the Broncos lack that they need to get? Talk to you tomorrow.